Hi guys, my name is Monique Jenkins and today I'm going to be talking to you about a wonderful strategy called story bags. And in the story bag, of course, I got to talk to you about the materials that you need. The first thing you need, of course, is a story bag. And inside that story bag, you're going to have several items. Either you can use pictures or you can use objects. Here's one that you can use that's dealing with your story or object, whichever one you choose. The next thing you'll need is a poster paper or a whiteboard, whichever you're going to use in your classroom for your kids to see, wherever you're going to prop it up at. The next thing you're going to need is just a blank sheet of paper or a template, whichever one that you desire. It's just a blank sheet of paper showing you of the T-chart, or you can actually print off the template. The template is actually found in a wonderful book. It's on page 64. Let me show you guys what it is. It's Accelerating Literacy for Diverse Learners. And this is the second edition. So if you want to know the exact page where you can find the template at. And also the rubric, which I'm about to show you next. All of that is found in the book, guys, for the story bag strategy. The next thing that you'll need is a brown paper bag, several, actually one per student in your class. And with the blank sheet of paper, also the template, you're going to need one per student also, whichever one you choose to use. Also, whichever book, of course, you're going to need that book that you're going to be talking about. And mine is Pete the Cat and his 4 groovy buttons. I actually got to do a lesson on this. So that's good. Of course, what you want to have with you is also some materials that you might need while setting up, such as you might need some tape. Depending on where you're going to set up your poster board, if you're going to use a poster board, a stapler. So you have your staples and your stapler. Just be prepared for whatever materials you're going to need in order to get this thing started. As it's activation time, in this part of the process, this is where you will gather your kids into small groups. 3 or 4 is usually what's required. For this part of the process. And in the midst of this process, you are going to allow them to examine the front cover of the book. And once they examine the front cover of the book, while they're looking at it, you're going to be explaining to them that they are going to be making predictions. And depending on what age group you might have to break that down a little bit so they can understand what predictions is. But you're going to explain to them that they're going to be making predictions on the objects that are going to be inside of the bag. And letting you know and their group know whether or not the object is going to be part of the book or not part of the book. Next, you will also just let them have the T-chart available, and you will guide them also with that T-chart by having the poster that I showed earlier. And that's just be a good way to guide them through the process, but they still will have their individual T-chart with them and in their group. All right, guys, so now once they're starting to begin to being ready to predict, you're going to start pulling things out of the bag. For instance, this here. And as I said, my book was Pete the Cat and the 4 Groovy Buttons. And you will simply ask them to predict if they thought that this would be a part of the story. Either it was in the story or not in the story. And you'll have them to sit there and do it solely by themselves. And eventually, as they get their answer, then they're going to talk collaboratively with their group. Once that ends up happening, then you'll go on and ask them why. Why do they think that this would be a part of the story or not part of the story? And as you begin to hear everyone collaborate, the next step would be for you to just circulate around so you can be able to hear everybody in their conversations that they're having. And this is good for diverse learners because they'll be able to express themselves within their own language. It'll also help those that's around them to be able to get a sense of their language and help them collectively together. So this is a good way just for everyone to hear everyone's background. Um, at the end of this process, after you begin to show them different things that could be a part of the story or not a part of the story, and they have made their predictions and decided on what they wanted to put, then they'll begin to vote. You'll do a class vote all together. And once you do that class vote for the first item, then you can either place it however, whichever kind of object you have, whether you have an object or you actually have paper. If you have paper, like I said earlier, you can tape it. If you have objects, you might have to find another unique way to put it, either Velcro or something like that, so that you can place it on. And if sometimes you might have some that might say, well, we don't know if it's going to be a part of the book or not a part of the book, then the text says that you can add a middle section if you want to, of a maybe section, or you can just place it in the middle, have them place it in the middle of the maybe section. All right, guys, so as we continue in this process, the children will begin to start getting into deeper connection with the text and the words that they are using. With using the objects and the pictures, it helps all of the learners, the CLD learners, and everyone just in general that's within the class. So as you begin to see that the conversation gets deeper and thicker, as the teacher, you'll begin to notice that some of the children might relate some of the objects to their own background. And this is good. This is really good for all of the children. Also, it broadens their vocabulary. So in the midst of this new process of the connection, as you begin to read, you will have your children to, however you would like to. One way would be to allow the group, as you read, to, if they need to change any object from one thing to the next as they are listening to the story, you can allow them to do that. Or you could choose to just choose a child out of the group to come up and place the object in the correct area, or to confirm that it is in the correct area. So there's many ways that you can do that, and that'll help the kids to continually collaborate and also to be engaged in the story. There's different ways that academically the kids will do well within this context, and understanding the context. This helps with this process and doing this strategy. Linguistically, with the kids being able to listen to the skills and hearing the words come out, that helps them as things are being read aloud. So now we are in the last stage, and this stage is called affirmation. Woohoo! So in affirmation, the affirmation stage, the kids will still begin to still be able to collaborate with one another. They'll still be able to share their background knowledge. They'll be able to solidify their understanding academically. And at the end of it all, they'll be able to gain ownership with sequencing and summarizing all the skills. So this is a big process of it all at the end. Okay, so once the children are in pairs again within the classroom, you will give each pair one object or a picture, whichever one you chose to use, for them to look throughout the book and find the page where they find that object. Once they find that object, you're going to ask them to explain to the class why or why not, or did they find it or did they not find it within that book. Once they do that, next you're going to pass out the story bags and have the story bags given out individually, and everyone's going to have their individual picture or object, and you're going to have the children to individually sequence the pictures in the order of the story. While they're doing that, that's going to also help broaden their skills and everything. And finally, you're going to have the students to write a summary of what they remembered about the story, and be able to place it on outside of the bag. And so throughout this whole process of the strategy, the kids are able to, again, collaborate, talking with one another, learning each other's backgrounds, being able to share each other's background, listen to each other's languages and the languages flying around the room, collaborating together with one another, being able to engage in the story and to have some kind of passion for the story before the story is even read, to be able to have the thrill to want to know what's inside of the book. So I thought this was a really decent strategy and very motivating for me to be able to want to even share it with my class.